Good morning, everyone, and welcome back to the Co-Engineer stream. We will just wait for a few minutes and get started. Can you just put a thumbs up in the comments if you can hear me, and we'll look to get started at 10 o'clock on the dot. Cool, we will get started at a couple of minutes, just getting everything ready. A couple of people have pinged me on LinkedIn to say that they're just going to be going on soon. Oh, loud and clear from Street Coding 581, I think is my old friend and colleague Shafiq, and Grey Cardinal, who is one of the co-engineers. And we'll see how this particular stream goes. Just waiting for the final minute, and then we're going to hopefully start to get building. Cool. Just a final minute. Just waiting for the last one or two people to come on, and then we will get rocking and rolling. Perfect. So my clock has just turned to 10 o'clock. So welcome everyone, and welcome back to the live stream. So this is the second stream in a number of 4 streams. And then after that, there is going to be even more content coming out from the co-engineer team. But today the stream is about building a Typeform competitor. So what we're going to do today is we're going to go over what we covered in the last session. So the last session, we can remember we built a whole bunch of cool artifacts, including business plans, PowerPoint decks, images, and stuff like that. Then we're going to go over the wireframes of what we're going to be building today. We're going to speak about the tech stack that we're going to be using. And then we're going to speak about really what's at the heart of today's session is spec-driven development and how we can use a GitHub tool alongside our LLM of choice. I'll be using Claude Code today to help us solve particular problems, and that will be building a Typeform competitor. So we'll kind of go through 3 or 4 cycles of that. After you kind of get the look and feel, you'll kind of realize it's fairly kind of simple to do. What we're not going to do today, it's going to be fairly kind of light touch on the technical stuff behind it, and we'll start to explore that in the next couple of sessions. So the whole purpose of the first few sessions is just to get people using some of other different tools. So that will be the main purpose of this session. And in the next one, we will start to look, when we're building a Monday.com competitor, we'll start to look at things like databases, things like test-driven development, etc. And then we'll take some architecture, we'll go through some things called PRDs, and we'll do some cool stuff. But ultimately, by the end of it, what we're going to do is going to build something that hopefully will add value and save you some money, particularly if you're using Typeform, if you're using SurveyMonkey, if you're using anything like that. So without further ado, let's get onto it. So we can remember last week, and just doing a little bit of a summary of what we covered. So we kind of spoke about getting started with Claude Code. We spoke about installing Claude Code and the steps to go through to get it working. I had a really fabulous person that phoned me quite quickly after the stream, someone from a sales background who's not done loads of tech, and we kind of sat and got Claude Code set up for him. And then we kind of looked at some of the things that Claude Code can do and can't do, but ultimately we kind of walk through the 20 labs that we've built for you. So we built the first 20 labs, and the first 5 of these labs were to build a manage and knowledge repository. So it's all about kind of taking the data that we've got in our business and structuring it so AI can make the best use of it. Then we looked at actually how to process our data. So all the unstructured data that we've got on our estate, albeit Word documents, PowerPoint, Excel, videos, images, all that type of stuff. We looked at getting that into the different things. Then we looked at starting to build some stuff with it, so skills and that type of stuff. So we looked at how to build images, how to build presentations, audio, all using the data model from it. So we'll cover that and we'll just go through the outputs, because when you actually see the outputs, it's incredibly useful what some of the things you can build. But what we kind of then done as well is we introduced our case study, and we spoke about the case study being this business that helps companies grow. However, they hadn't quite got their own data and their own business processes up to speed. So we were kind of helping them to do it. So the next stage with kind of growth path is we're going to build some tools for them to save them some money and help them grow their business, who are ultimately helping others to grow as well. So we met Hoddle, we met Flora, we met Angus, and we met Isla. So remember, Hoddle's this kind of CEO. We met Isla, who is the kind of operations manager. We met Angus, who is the kind of tech lead, and we finally met Isla, who was the marketing manager. And for those of you, if you're kind of new to the stream, everything's been well documented. So if you just follow this through from the kind of start to the end, you should manage to kind of work through it, which is pretty cool. So what I'm just going to do then is really quickly kind of speak about the outputs from the session. So what we kind of spoke about before, so if you remember, this is the Obsidian tool, but I don't need us to really worry about that. I just want to speak about some of the outputs that we built. So what we built was business plans, we built proposals, financial forecasts, statement of works, we built loads of different images, or we kind of spoke about in the labs how to build the different images. So for example, this 20 cartoon strip that I've been sharing on LinkedIn, that was all built with one of the labs, and I think it's lab 441. So we kind of built all the different labs using the new Nano Banana Pro model. So this kind of takes you through some funny bits of why to do the labs. Some other things that we built last week, we built a podcast to go and share some data with. We built some PowerPoints. So this one here uses the Gamma API. So if we just click on this one and have a quick look at it, and they were all using that structured data model. So if you remember the stages we went through last week, is that we took our data, we structured it into a common format using the labs that I built for you. Then after that, what we done was we took the different bits of unstructured data that you've got in your estate, your documents, your meeting transcripts, that type of stuff. We put them into Obsidian, and then we built workflows on top of them to build stuff like this. So what I don't like sometimes, I'm using some of these image generation things, they don't quite get the images right. So I just asked, so basically what I done from this was, from the data model that I created, I said, use the Gamma API, so Gamma is a presentation tool, and go and create me a nice PowerPoint deck that explains the different business and the business cycles. So that one is pretty cool. And then just some other examples that we've done. So we built a financial forecast. So for any of the ones out there who are building financial forecasts every day. So once again, this was all driven from that data model. So we can see we've got our revenue lines, our costs, and overall P&L. And for anyone that's kind of not done that before, so that's profit and loss. And what's really powerful about this is that this is all driven from that data model in the back end. I've just noticed my good old friend Javal is back on here. It's been a very long time, my friend. So welcome to the stream. So this is what we covered in the last session. And as I said, if you want to kind of go through it, there's kind of steps there is how to pull the code, how to run the code. But essentially kind of what we done was, step number one, we made this data model. Step number two, we processed our own data. So that was Word documents, customer transcripts. Step number three, we built some workflows on top of it. So the workflows that we built was a business plan creator, a proposal creator, a financial forecast, and a statement of work. And then we connected to some external APIs. So for the brand and image generator, we connected Claude Code to the Google Gemini Nano Banana API. For the PowerPoint, or for the complex PowerPoint, we connected to the Gamma presentation API. And last but not least, for the podcast, what we connected to was the 11 Labs API. So that's what we covered last week. And this week, what we're going to look at, so if we just get back to the plan for the stream, is we are now then going to start building things for Growth Plan to help them save money. And we're going to use this to go and explore some different things over the next couple of weeks. So first of all, we're going to build a Typeform competitor. Next weekend, we're going to build a Monday.com competitor. And the final weekend, we're going to go all out and we're going to go and take on the big boys, HubSpot and Salesforce, try and build that in 2 hours. A little bit of joking aside, there's obviously so much we can continue and get done in this amount of time. But after you've kind of got the patterns and you understand how it works, then to build something medium complex shouldn't take so long. So just to kind of think about the application that we're going to be exploring. So this is Typeform. Typeform's a survey tool. And essentially what you do with Typeform is you come in here, you create a new form, and you can add all these widgets, you create the form, and then you can send it to a customer. So things you might use Typeform for is things like customer engagement. If you're doing Learner, you might do it for learning labs and learning feedback. If you're doing leads and lead generation, you might use Typeform to generate leads. So Typeform is kind of a very kind of famous tool for building surveys. The biggest competitor it's probably got in the market is either Google Surveys, I think it's called, or Google Forms, and then also things like SurveyMonkey. And if we just look at the pricing model for Typeform, it's incredibly expensive. So for the kind of business wanting to get rid of the Typeform branding, for the kind of monthly cost on the annual subscription is £66 per month. So if you're kind of thinking about that with some other things, you're thinking about nearly £800 per month, and that's if you buy it annually. If you buy it and you pay for it monthly, you're talking about the best part of £1,000 for this one tool, and that would give us 5 seats and a whole bunch of extra things. And obviously, we're not going to build a whole enterprise system today. But when I'm building these surveys and these tools, all I really want is to build the kind of the survey that I want, and I typically want to put it on my website or on my application. So all this extra bits of functionality, if I could have a really just an easy way to say to something like Claude, build me a 4-page form. On page number 1, I want the user's data, and page number 2, I want them asking about their interests. On page 3, I want to ask them about what their job role is. And on page 4, I want them to ask them about their spending habits, for example, and press return. That would be a lot simpler for me than paying this money and then going on to Typeform and building that stuff out. So that's what we're going to be exploring today. So if we just go back to the overall thing that we're going to be building. So here is the wireframe, what we're going to be creating today. So I built these wireframes using Nano Banana Pro. So if no one's used that model, it's absolutely incredible. So this is kind of low fidelity wireframe, but you can go all the way through up to really high fidelity stuff. So typically from that data model we built last week, you can build really interesting things off of it. So essentially like what the system prompt I kind of put into Claude to build this was, can you use Nano Banana, and can you use the Gemini skill that we built last week, and can you build me a wireframe for what we're going to be building today? So it's going to be quite simple, but the way that I want to kind of do this is when we kind of log in, I want to have all the forms down the left-hand side, and then every time that I ask for a new form, it's kind of stored in this one place. So for anyone it's kind of technical or semi-technical on the call today, what we're not going to be exploring is going to be storing the data in a database. That'll be the next session. So everything that we're going to be doing today is just going to be stored in the browser inside local storage. So essentially, like just to kind of get us going today, we're going to explore different concepts every week. But this one is really going to be about getting to grips with spec-driven development with GitHub and SpecKit. So basically, if we kind of look at some of the key things that we're going to be doing, we're going to be looking at creating a form. We're going to look at different form types. We're going to be looking at saving the data in the browser. And we're going to try and make the UI look really elegant and polished. So for that, we're going to be using a kind of component tool called ShadCN. So if you just think about this like building blocks, and if you're non-technical on the call, just think about it. You see on your website, you see buttons and you see forms and you see all these types of things, navigation bars. ShadCN just gives us all these different elements that we can use out of the box. So they kind of got all these different components that we can install. So everything from dashboards to taskboards to playgrounds to authentication systems. So we're going to use ShadCN today to build up our front end for the form library. And when we start to build it out, some of these terms will start to become a lot more obvious in what we are doing. So then after what we're doing, so from the technical people that are on the call, the things that we're going to be exploring, we're going to be using React, and we're going to use Vite to package up the bundle for the HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. As I said, we're going to use ShadCN for the components and for making the UI look nice. We're not going to use a database this week. We're going to use local storage, so all the form data will be stored to the browser. But next week we will use Supabase and Postgres and get to explore some of that stuff. And then finally, what we're going to use is TypeScript as the programming language. So what we're going to use is this new tool called Spec-driven development. So if you've come across spec-driven development, my kind of guess is it's one of the more important tools that are in the market now. So as kind of code starts to become easier to do with these LLMs, and I think everyone that's kind of in the game now understands that that's something that's coming quite quickly, what we start to need to know is how to make these LLMs work in such a way where we can still build high quality code, but most importantly, work with customers to understand requirements and then use the LLM to maybe build the first pass of different user stories. So spec-driven development. So if you want to go and have a look through, so if you go to github.com and spec kit for the kind of technical documentation, it's available there. But it's basically like an agile methodology that we go through a number of cycles to build user stories. So essentially, like in the kind of old way, you would go through the design phase, the code phase, the test phase, the deployment phase, and then repeat that again and again and again. With spec-driven development, you do exactly the same, but you use the AI to help you through that process. So essentially, this is the things we're going to be covering today. So in this GitHub, it takes you through how to install it, what it is, and that type of stuff. And that was what we will be exploring today. But before we crack on, any questions from anyone in the stream? I will be checking it periodically. Hopefully I sound okay and that all makes sense. All right. So the way that spec-driven development works, so the way that I like to make it work, so typically I would start off with a PRD. So if you've not come across a PRD, it's a typical business analyst tool that describes the end-to-end system that wants to be built. So it's called a product requirements document. And inside that, you're typically going to have who the user of the system is, what are the technical requirements of the system, what are the non-functional requirements of the system, what is the system that is going to be built, any things that are that are kind of impediments, assumptions, that type of stuff, all in one place. So I've created an example, and I've created an example on GitHub. So we're going to explore GitHub in a little bit more depth next week. But what I've done here is I've created the PRD as a GitHub issue. So hopefully, I think it's public, so everyone should manage to access this if you want to read through in your own time. For some reason, my copy and paste not working on my keyboard. It's all right, we can do it the old-fashioned way. Cool. So if you want to follow along and have a read through some of this, that's where all the different issues are. So basically here we've got our PRD. So it's got an overview of the system that we want to build. So we're building the Typeform style system. It's got the problem statement. So basically at growth path, they're spending 300 quid a year. So they must be in one of the rubbish plans, because as we saw before, it's about £1,000 a year. So we've got two people in there. So like two of the users, we have got Flora, who looks over customer success, and she is kind of dealing with customer leads that she's using it for. And Angus, gosh, I'm Scottish, I can't even say that word, is using it for customer feedback. So essentially, what we're going to be doing is replacing that. So it speaks about the solution that we're going to build. It talks about the user personas. It takes the technical requirements. It talks about the user stories, and we'll come to them in 2 minutes. It talks about the success criteria, how we're going to build it, and what's out of scope. So as you can see in really common English, what you can see is this is what we're going to build. And I used AI to kind of work with this. So I worked with, I think it was Gemini, to build out this initial PRD. So next week when we're going to be doing the system for Monday.com, we'll use the exact same workflow. For the system we're going to be using for the CRM, exactly the same workflow. So that's a little bit about the PRD. And then after we've got the PRD and we've got the user stories, so what I've broke the PRD into is a number of different user stories. So we've got user story number 1, what's setting up all the infrastructure. And once again, the LLM helped me build this. So we've kind of said, this is what the project's going to look like. This looks like code. And I know for people that are on or the stream are looking at it in their own time, you've probably not been exposed to this before. We're going to look at some ways that we can do it so that you don't need to get exposed back to code. So we can put some validation steps in and that type of stuff. We can work with communities to ask actual engineers to review your code. So even if you're kind of scared of the code, feel free to try and not get too in depth with it. There is some core things we're going to have to learn next week, what a database is, what tests are, that type of stuff. But for today, and because we're just going to be working in the browser, feel free to have a play about with it. So then we've got the different components we're going to be using. So that's essentially user story number 1, which is kind of setting up all our folders and the folder structure. Then after that, we're going to set up our sign navigation system. So if you remember back from the wireframe, we've got this navigation system with our list of different type forms we're going to build. And then next what we've got is we have got the first form, which is the form for Flora, which is the customer details form. And then next after that, finally, we've got the form for Angus, which is the feedback form about the product. So basically the way that spec-driven development works is for each user story, you run spec.specify, and that builds out the initial user stories, or the kind of more low-level user stories, sorry. Then we're going to use spec.kit.plan, and that is going to build out the technical components. So the data model, any APIs, any research it needs to go and do. Then we're going to use spec.kit.tasks, which is going to give a to-do list of everything that needs to be done to use that user story. And then we're going to run spec.kit.implement, and spec.kit.implement is essentially what's going to go and do the code for you. Really important for everyone on the call, in that spec.kit.implement, typically what we would say is do extremely robust testing, including unit testing, integration testing, and even end-to-end testing. Because the LLM takes a little while to run, and I don't want the stream just to be us sitting watching outputs, I'm going just to miss that bit for today. But when I kind of push this to GitHub for you to access, I will have all the tests in there. So it's just kind of key. So the only reason I'm going to mitigate this step today in the implementation stage of not doing the testing is just for time, because if not, we'll be waiting for an hour for the run to complete. So we're going to go through that 4 times. We're going to use that spec.kit.specify, and we're going to go through it 4 times. So let's actually get into it and start to do it, and then we'll come back, and while it's running, we'll talk through some of the theory behind it. So at the moment, you can use either your command line tool. I like using this tool called Warp. Warp's a free tool, and essentially the reason I like Warp because it's the command line that we covered last week, but also what it's got is got your file structure on the left-hand side. So you could do this in an IDE, you could do it in Visual Studio Code if you're on the call, you could do it in WebStorm, you could do it in whatever, for every IDE they use. Typically, I really like Google's anti-gravity. And with SpecKit, what's really cool as well is that SpecKit is not just for Claude Code. So it works with any coding assistant, Copilot, GitHub Copilot. It works with Google Gemini CLI, Codex, Open Code, a whole bunch of other ones. So all SpecKit is a framework, and it can work in any of the major LLMs. So that is my code actually from earlier on. So on this Warp thing, what we've got on the left-hand side is what we covered last week. And then what I've got here on the next one, sorry, what we've got is the blank project. So we've kind of got this blank project, or blank canvas to go and start from. So the first thing that we need to do is we need to install SpecKit. So you will need to install Python on your system. So basically, your Claude can help you with that. And then after you've installed Python, all you'll have to do is run the command from the GitHub I shared earlier on to install SpecKit. And at that point there, you can then run from your command line. And if we go to my command line, specify init. And basically what specify init does is it lets you choose all the information to go and set up SpecKit. So here I can choose what one I want to use. So I'm going to be using Claude Code. It's going to ask me what type of operating system on. So if I'm on Windows, I'm going to use PowerShell. I'm on Mac, so I'm going to use SH. And then what it's going to do is build up a whole bunch of folders for us. So essentially what it's doing, and we'll kind of go through this in 2 seconds, it's going to build a whole bunch of folders for us. So it's going to build this speckit.constitution, it's going to build this specify, and these are the tools that we're going to be using today to build the actual code out. So let's just have a quick look. So you can see now we've got these different folders that's built for us. So it's built this specify folder that's got a whole bunch of different things that we're going to go through in a little bit. It's got this Git hooks, which we'll go through next week, but everything here is built around Git and Git workflows, which is really cool. And last but not least, it gives us access to these commands. So now if I log into Claude, and for those of you, if you weren't on last week, all of the information of how to set up Claude is in here. And if I run the / command now, I've got access to all these SpecKit tools. So basically what we need to do is run SpecKit 4 times to build each user story out. And then the LLM is going to use our PRD, the user story that we've kind of worked through and built, to build out that particular code. So I've just done this in an example folder at the moment, but it really is that simple. So really the thing that we're going to be doing is we'll be going speckit.specify and then telling it as much detail as the user story that we wanted to. So we could do that on GitHub issues, or we could just talk natively into the browser. So we could put it directly in here. So I want to build a typeform system. And the more detail that we give it at this stage of the tools that we want to use, the workflows that we want to use, the better that it will be. So that's what we're kind of going to be going through. So I'm just going to change into another directory, and I'm going to use the directory where we're going to be putting our code today. So I'm just going to come out of Claude Code. Cool. I'm just going to change into a different directory. Cool. So all this directory and folder has got in it. It's got everything that we done last week. So it's got the knowledge vault that we built. It's got the process data that we built. It's got all of the outputs that we built that we went through earlier on. But most importantly, it's got our PRD inside here as well. So why that PRD is really important, that SpecKit is going to use that and read the PRD to make some high-level rules. So the only thing outside that speckit.specify, speckit.plan, speckit.tasks, and speckit.implement that we need to run is something called speckit.constitution. So if anyone's came from a Claude background or from OpenAI background, so if you've looked at agents.md, or if you have looked at Claude.md and got the configurations for the file, speckit.constitution is the high-level rules for your project. So for example, if you want it always to be in British English, that would be a sample rule. If you hate the M dashes, so you know how you look at posts on from people that are using AI, and it's got that kind of long, that kind of long dash. It's called an M dash. So you can put that as a rule. So the only extra thing that we need to do now is we need to set up the constitution, and then after that we can then use SpecKit to go and start to get building. So first of all, we're just going to run it once again. So we're going to run specify init dot, and that's going to say, we're going to go yes. and we're going to go Claude, and we're going to go shell. So that's going to set up all our Claude, our get, and our specify. So we'll come back to that in a little second, and then we're going to run Claude. So all we've done there is we have linked Claude to SpecKit. And if we just go back, and if we look through the documentation that I've created for you, the steps to do that are in here. So how to install it, how to set it up for your project, and how to check that it works, and then all the access of the things that you have access to. So ultimately what we've just done there is set the SpecKit tool up. So the first thing that we're going to need to do before that we go and start to go and build stuff is create this constitution file. So constitution file is just basically the high rules of the project. So things like always use British English, things like never use M dashes, things like using vertical slice development, and we'll talk about what that is next week. But when you're building with AI, if you build with a certain kind of a methodology in mind of where you put certain things, it's really easy to go and change and refactor stuff. Always use TDD. That would be another example. We're not going to put that one in today, but if you are doing that in your own time, I'd really suggest that, because that's going to give you a lot of belief and a lot of knowledge within the system. So let's go back into Warp, and we're going to run it. So we're going to go speckit.constitution, and all we're going to do is say our PRD, and then I've got this tool that I love called Whisper Flow. I'm just going to open that. And basically what Whisper Flow is that it allows me to work with my computer without typing, so I can use voice. So the key things that I want in this constitution, I always want to use British English. On top of that, I would never want to use M dashes, and I want to use vertical slice development. That's the key 3 rules. And also look at any information in our PRD, and please create that into the constitution. So all that's done there has kind of listened to what I've said, and you can see there it's kind of picked it up. So they're not a sponsor of this, the Whisper Flow team. I think it's £12 per month, $15, and it is probably the greatest time saver I've ever worked with. So what I'm going to do now is run that. So basically what this is going to run, it's going to run the specify constitution script. So you can see this is what's happening in the background. Now it's reading my PRD, so the PRD that we went through before. And ultimately what this is going to do in the background is going to build our rules for the road. So you can now see that the 3 explicit rules that it's mentioned is British English, no M dashes, and vertical slice development. And I bought this cool thing. Let me have a little play with it to see if this works. Yeah, I'll have a look at that good thing there. Yeah. So there it says there. So the 3 explicit user requirements, British English, no M dashes, vertical slice development. So essentially what is happening when we run that speckit.constitution, this is building the rules file. So that's it done now. So this is telling us is what it's going to put into this rules file. And although this looks a little bit daunting for those that are non-technical on the stream or watching in their own time, this is just basically a diff. So it's basically saying on the red, this is what it's changing, and in the green is what it's adding. So like we can kind of read through generally and we can see what it's adding. So if we just scroll down a little bit more and we just kind of look through it. So rule number 1 is British English. All code, documents, comments, and user-facing text must be in British English, the requirements. Then number 2, number 3. So when we press yes here, what that is going to do is in this specify folder and in this memory folder, it's going to make this constitution.md with the rules that we want to have. So then what we're not going to get from the AI is American English spellings. And if there is any American English spelling folk on it, that's not the right way to write properly. Jokes. Who am I to talk? I'm from Scotland. Okay. So what that's doing now is actually writing that to that memory. So every time that we run that now, what we're going to do, it's going to use that. And to just show you, to make sure that there's nothing magical going on in the back end, if I just look into the memory file, this is what it says now. So core principles, British English, Won't read that all out there. No M dashes, so that's what an M dash is, if anyone wondered what they were. So we're not going to have that when we're writing stuff. And this vertical slice development. So please feel free to have a read about what that is. We're going to cover it in a little bit more kind of detail next week. Essentially what it is a way that the AI is going to structure our code so it's really easy to add new stuff. And for that, you just need to think about it. It's added this one in there, simplicity first as well. So that's came from my PRD. So we're going to go like local storage first and no database, type safety and build integrity. And it's came up with all our stuff there. So that looks really, really good to me. So now we're at a stage where we can start to build. But before that we do, the only last thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to ask it to build me a Claude.md file. So if we run this / command and we go init, so basically when we run the / command from Claude, there's a whole bunch of things that we can access. So we can add directories, we can make new web agents, we can access Google Chrome. So if there are any testers in the stream, we can drive something that's very similar to Selenium via the agent. We can clear the context. We'll come through to that, very important. We can look at config. So if we go to config, we can see how much usage that I've got of the LLM. So already, I'm on £150 plan. So for the planning for the session today, I've already used 57% of my tokens up to 11 o'clock. So it's super interesting stuff. And I won't go through every single one of these here, but there's all these different things that we can do. There's hooks, there's things to go and link it to GitHub, to Slack, to different MCP servers. We covered that slightly last week, and all that different things here. So unbelievably cool. But I'm just going to run this init method. And essentially what this is going to build is the technical rules. So essentially what the constitution.md is the high level rules of the kind of, so if someone was coming onto your project and you just want to tell them this is the way that they work, what the Claude.md is the thing that's run every time with the more technical rules. So what we'll kind of explore that in a little bit more detail next week. But what the AI is doing now is building this Claude.md, which is the more technical rules. And I explained that once again in the lab. So the things that are kind of key to that we're going to be exploring today is PRD first development. So we've covered that. The constitution file, which is the high level rules. The Claude MD, which is going to be our technical requirement. And these other two we're going to cover in a little minute. So if we just go back to our IDE, and it says now it's going to go and build the Claude.md. So let's just look at some of the things it's going to do. So it's going to use this technology stack. That's technology stack I want to use. It's going to set up these commands for us. It's copied some of the stuff from the specify.md. That looks good. It's going to use this workflow. Quite basic at the moment. Usually I have a little bit more structure and detail in that, but for this session, that'll be plenty. So if anyone's on the kind of thing from a technical background and you want to use a very specific folder structure, you want to use a very specific library, that's where all that stuff can go in there. Cool. So I'm just going to just take a quick pause, grab a little drink, and then we will start building. Cool. So what we've got now also is this Claude.md file. Sorry, I've got so many windows open. It'll be super confusing for everyone in the stream. So now we've got this Claude.md file. So basically this is just the kind of technical rules. So now we've got everything set up to start building really any application we want to do in React.js, using TypeScript, using local storage, and using ShadCN. So we're at a stage now where we could go and build that CRM system, where we could go and build that more technical Monday.com competitor. But for today, what we're going to do is we're going to run a couple of cycles, and hopefully we're going to have a fairly elegant Typeform competitor. So one of the things, if we look at the fourth rule on my thing, is this idea around context reset. So when you're working with an LLM and you're asking it questions and it's giving you answers, it's using something called the context window. And that's basically the window where you've kind of got your tokens or the inputs and outputs that you can put in. So with Claude, the kind of context window is about 200,000 tokens. And as you start to work with it more, you quite quickly lose that kind of context limit, or the more tokens that you use up, the more the LLM gets confused. So basically what I do, and because we're using spec-driven development and everything's documented, we can reset our context all the time. So like when we're going through each phase of it and to try and make sure that AI doesn't hallucinate, what we're going to do then is we're going to change the context window all the time. And after you saw me do this like 3 or 4 times, you'll get it really quickly. Cool, so let's get to it. So I'm going to run clear, and that clear basically gives us a new context window. So now I've got a new 200k context to go and work with. So I'm going to run spec-kit.specify, and then what I'm going to tell it, so instead of actually going to say all of the things that I want to build for user story number 1, I'm going to link to my PRD and the user story in GitHub. So if I just go and find them in GitHub, if we just go back to GitHub again, and the PRD was at this link, so we'll put that in here, and we will go to our user story as well. That one, and we will get our first user story. Perfect. So basically, if you work with any tool, so if you work with Jira, if you work with GitHub Issues, if you work with Monday.com, which we'll kind of be looking at next week, you can link directly to that board and take the information out of them. I'm just going to add a little extra couple of bits here just for it. So all the other things that I'm going to say is inside our Claude.md, can you put a reference to that we're going to be using GitHub to get the PRD and the issue for each spec-kit.specify, and please ask me any questions if you're unsure. So basically what's going to happen when we run this command spec-kit.specify, it's going to go out to GitHub, it's going to get our PRD, it's going to go and get our user story, and then it's going to use that to drive the development lifecycle. So when I click return, what's actually happening now, and we'll see it going through the different instructions. So first of all, it's going to analyze GitHub, so it's going to look at the 2 URLs. So first of all, it's using a fetch, so it's going out to the internet and it's getting the GitHub URL, and then after that is getting the issue, so we're going to click yes. And then essentially what this is going to do now is get that information and create the initial spec kit off of it. So I couldn't find any file name inside it all. Let me see more broadly. So I said, so when I used the text to speech, because of my Scottish accent, it thought I said Claude insider claw.md when I said Claude.md. So it's came back and said basically it doesn't understand my accent, which is not too surprising. So sorry, I meant Claude.md. My bad. I was using text to speech. There you go. Don't have Scottish people streaming, or the AI can't work you out. Cool. So now what we're hopefully going to say, I still need one more file. Should I create a spec for, yeah, just for issue number 2. We will run others in different spec cycles. So basically it's asking me for a clarification here, because I gave it the whole PRD. What it would have tried to do is build all 4 user stories in one go. Now, probably for the simplicity of this project, it probably could do all 4 in one go, but just to show people of how this works, we'll run it through a few times. So now, hopefully, we're at a stage where it's going to go and take my high-level user story and break that into lower-level user stories. So it's reading our Claude.md, and now it's running the spec template. And what that's going to use then it's going to create a new folder, and that folder is going to be called specs. And inside the specs folder, what's going to have in it is going to have something called spec kit with our issue that we're going to be doing. So it's just updating our Claude.md at the moment with where our GitHub links are, so we don't need to keep using that. The next steps that it's doing here, it's creating a new GitHub branch. We'll talk about what this is next week, but really it's just a way that we can build code in a secure way in a different thread without having to get the main code or the main application that we've built confused, but we'll cover that next week. And then now in the back end, what it's going to be doing is going to go and build this new feature branch. And we'll come through, we'll cover what that is next week. Then it's going to go and build these files and folders for it. So we're just going to, I know this might be like just looking at loads of different things that's kind of coming through this command line, but we'll go back to the drawing board and talk this through in a little minute. So essentially what it's saying here, it's going to build out this spec-kit.specify. And if I just bring up my handy new tool and point out some of the things that's quite interesting on this cycle. So it's writing the specification for issue 2 infrastructure setup, and then it's going to validate the quality of that particular call. So what we expect the output for this to be is a number of detailed user stories for the infrastructure setup, which basically describes the feature in the terms of an end user. So something like, as a customer, I want to log into the system so I can access my type form or something similar. Cool, so now what you can see, we've created this new folder called specs. Oh, specs there. And inside the specs folder, it has got a new folder called infrastructure setup. And in this infrastructure setup, it's got a file called specs.md. So that's still writing at the moment, so it's not quite finished yet. But in the specs.md file, what we'll have is all the user stories. And believe me, after you've done this once, you've done it 100 times. And then it's just reading through to make sure that the AI is going to build the right thing for you. So now it's wanting to write to the specs.md. So if we just go and read through this folder now. So what it's done is it's created this new feature branch, what we'll cover is next week. And then it's created these user stories for us. So the first user story that it's created, and if we just get our handy dandy tool back, is the user story number 1, creating the development environment. So as a developer, I want to create a React app with ShadCN and local storage persistence so I can have a solid foundation. Why this is a priority, gosh, I can't get this the right way, what good looks like, and then what makes this scenario successful. So given a fresh clone of the repository, when I run this command, then I can access my application. That looks pretty cool to me. User story number 2, what we've got is we've got one around data persistence. So as a developer, I want to store my data locally, and then it's got some here. It's got some production build readiness. So essentially, when we run spec-kit.plan, it's going to use these user stories to build our first iteration of our code for us. So I'm just going to close that now. So if I just close this particular window, and then I add that requirements.md, and that's the first cycle done. So basically what we've got here now is just the user stories. So the next thing we need to do is we need to plan and get all the technical implementation ready. Then we need to do the task list, and then we need to do implement. So before, if we remember, I was saying about the context window. So at the moment, if we run /context, we will see how much of the context window we've used up so far, or how much of the tokens that we've used up for this session. I ran the wrong one, so that's not going to work there. /context. Why is it done that? Let me get back onto this. /resume. Cool, and then /column. There we go there. Cool, so basically in this session, we've still got a lot of context left. So we could still keep going. So this is how much it's been used so far. But just to get into good habits, because everything's already been documented, if we run /clear, we start a whole new context window. So now if I run spec-kit.plan, so next time we want to use the plan, and we put in the infrastructure and the setup, then basically we've just told it this is the user stories that we want to go and do, and we press enter. Now it's going to go and build out all of that technical content for us. So yep, so what's happening now? Now you can see it's created this plan.mt. It's going to do quite a lot of things now for us. It's going to go and look at any APIs that we might go and hook at. It's going to look at any best practices that we want to use. It's going to go and research any libraries that we want to use. And then it's going to show us how to kind of kick off and kickstart our project. So if you're a kind of developer and you're doing loads of research for a new tool, for example, this can be a really quick way to get you going quite quickly. So I had a customer project not too long ago that used Microsoft Foundry, which is the Microsoft Azure offering. And I used this to build the initial prototype to get us going fairly quickly. So now what you can see now, it's building this plan.md. So you can start to see now it's speaking more about the code and the stuff that it's going to do for us. So we're going to press yep. And then it's going to go and do the research, the data model, the contracts, and the agent context. So just to talk through each one of them. So what this research goes and does, it looks at any of the libraries that we're going to be using. So for example, ShadCN, and then it makes it all available inside this folder, so we don't have to look through it manually. Then it's going to build any database stuff that we need, or any data model stuff that we need. So for example, we're going to be using local storage, so it's going to say the structure of the form data that we're going to be sharing. Then it's going to build any contracts, so any APIs we're going to be connecting to. So now we can see what it's doing. If we get up to the top, it's created the research for us. So it's researched Vite and React and TypeScript. It's researched ShadCN. It's researched local storage. It's researched layout architectures. So if I just press yes now, and then what it's created is this new file called research.md. So I know that this kind of cycle takes a little bit of time, but after you kind of get used to it, you're not vibe coding, you're using the tools to help you build quality. So we'll just talk through and have a look through this while it's working. So it's going to research tasks. It decided to use npm create Vite, and it's decided to use the latest version of ShadCN. It considered using these different things, including Material UI, Shakura, and all this different stuff. It's went and researched the local storage pattern, and all this information here is super useful to me. And at any time I can stop and ask the AI if I disagree with anything that is put in there and ask it to change it. So now we're going to go yes, and it's going to create the data model. So the data model is going to be any of the data stuff that we can do. And what we can do now as well, we can actually ask it to do these in parallel to make it go a little bit faster. So maybe we'll do that next time actually, because we'll just talk through them at the moment. So if we go through the data model one now, it talks about the data that it's going to be storing. So it's going to create a form. The form's going to have an ID, a title, a description, a field, a created, and a status. Makes sense to me. It's going to have a form field. Inside the form field, it's going to have a unique ID. It's going to have these different types of form controls. Looks good. It's going to have these different placeholders and placeholder texts. It's going to have a form response. So if we send stuff into a form, we want a response. So it's going to give us an ID, a form name. That looks good to me. The form's going to have different types of answers. The relationship is a form can have many fields. A form can have many responses. And the form can have an answer, a single answer. Looks good to me. It talks about how it's going to store it in local storage. And for the non-technical people in the stream, as you start to read through these and start to understand, you're really starting to understand what the system's doing for you. So although you're maybe not an expert in React and you don't even know what React is, just starting to read through these things can make it really useful. And what we can do at the end as well, we can start asking questions against these different documents, and the LLM can help teach us what it's actually doing. So the next thing that it's done is this contracts folder. So basically in the contracts folder, it's typically the APIs it's going to be doing, or the different database queries types things that are working with external services. So here it is working with saving an item, getting an item, removing an item, getting a form ID, all looks really good to me. And then, cool, so now it's going to build the quick start. And then last but not least, it's going to update the agent context. And although this takes a little while, once again, when you're watching a lot of these YouTube videos about vibe code and it's not using any other trigger, so when you kind of go and push your code and then you get some bugs and stuff like that, it's because you've not really thought about the plan to go and do it. And as I said, if you're kind of new to it and you've not done this before, join a community, join GitHub, ask me on LinkedIn if you're really not sure after you've built something and you want someone to have a look through it. Ask AI to kind of go through it for you in its own time and work it out. So now I think it's nearly created everything. So it's updating the agent context. It's got this quick start, sorry, that's the only one that we've not missed. So this tells all the commands to get us running. So it's going to run the story. It's going to use this test form data. It's going to build this project structure. All looks really, really good to me. And then finally, it's going to add it's going to change our plan.md. So if we go to plan.md now, so we've got our summary, we've got our technical requirements, we've got the checks it's going to go through, we've got the design checks it's going to work against. I think we're going to build something pretty cool here. We're going to build something that's going to be really powerful. So that now has got everything. So now I'm going to run the next one, which is going to be speckit.tasks. I'm going to do it in the same context window. So we've only got two things that we need to run now, speckit.tasks, speckit.implement, and then we'll have some code that we can have a play about with. This one's will probably go a little bit faster. So speckit.tasks is basically going to be a list of tasks that we want it to do. So at the moment, it's reading the plan, it's reading the spec, it's reading the data model, it's reading the research, everything that we spoke about before. So it's reading the plan that we just talked through, it's reading the spec, the data model, the research, the quick start, the storage API, and now it's getting this tasks template and it's creating tasks.md. So basically this is the to-do list for AI. So this is going to go through all of the things that we want to go and build with our spec-driven development approach. Pretty nice tool this when it's just doing. Let's look what else it can do. Only cost $5. Got different colors. That's pretty cool. We've got this. What does this one do? And there we go. There we go. Something to kill a little bit of time when we're working with this AI. So now what we've got is our task list. So what we've got now is all the tasks that AI is going to go through. So step number one, it's going to start our project. It's going to initialize our application. It's going to install ShadCN. It's going to install the button, the card, the input, the label, the separator, and create the structure. Sorry if you can hear my tummy rumbling there. I've got a pretty good at microphone, so it's probably came through. It's going to go through these foundational steps. And then it's going to go through each one of the user stories that it build and specify. It's going to build our header component, our sidebar component, our React container, and then it's going to build our data persistent stuff. So it's going to do the saving and all that type of stuff. And then it's going to run and polish it and make sure that it's all ready for us. So as I said, if I wasn't doing a stream, I would have a number of phases here around testing as well. So I'd have one around unit testing, I'd have one around integration testing, and one around end-to-end testing. And for those of you, once again, we'll cover this next week, but that's going to give us and make sure that the code is really quality. So I'm going to start a new context window, and I'm going to go speckit.implement. And then I'm just going to tell it the folder structure. But here I'm going to do something different as well. So basically, with Claude Code, you can do things in parallel. And what this means is instead of running your tasks one at a time, so like here, I'd run 1, 2, 3, 4 at a time, what we can do is we can run these in parallel. So run tasks at the same time. Now, there is some kind of give and gets here. You're might going to introduce more bugs to the system because like different things might work on things at the same time. Because we're on a stream, I'm going to use this just as a training aid to make it go quicker. And also because if it comes with bugs, we can show how we can use the AI to help us solve that problem as well. So I'm just going to say, can you do this in parallel where it makes sense? Cool. So it's a really question from Siobhan asking, how do you personally kind of define the scope of the user stories? And it's a really kind of great question. So next week we're going to speak about this vertical slice development, and essentially, like when we talk about that, I really try and do one feature at a time. Now, like the AI, in all honesty, could have probably done all that 3 features at the same time. But so for what I mean by a feature in this kind of context would be each one of the type forms. Um, as you get more used to it and use it, you kind of work out what the limits of what it can currently do is. But I kind of keep it to one feature at a time, if that makes sense. Cool. So now we're getting into the interesting bit, and we're writing the code. So hopefully in about 3 minutes' time, we're going to have something that we can actually use. And Javon, what we'll do on the next one, because it's just about the workflow, we'll run all other 3 user stories in one go, and we'll see if it makes some bugs. So like the more you can add and the more user stories that you get, the more that it might just get confused on itself. But so that we're not just watching this for hours and hours, we'll try and run the final 3 user stories, and we'll talk through what they are all at the same time, and we'll see what happens. Cool, so I have all the context needed. The get ignore exists. We'll cover what that is next week. And now what it's going to do, so phase number 1 is going to write the code for our TypeScript project. Phase number 2 is it's going to install and configure ShadCN. So that's our buttons, our forms, that type of stuff. And every time you can see as well, what it's asking me is to approve the command that it wants to run. So I'm going to say, yep, you can do this npm install command, but really I'm still completely in control. So it's asking me every folder and every file that it wants to go and create. So task number 1's completed. So now it's going to install ShadCN. So I'm going to say to that it can install any ShadCN components that it does. And if I go the second yes, it's going to allow it to go and do all the kind of commands for ShadCN. So it'll just mean I don't need to press return quite as much. Cool, so it's installed ShadCN. It's not installed this Tailwind CSS, so that now you can see that what it's doing. So when you're reading through, you know exactly what's happening. So we're going to go yes. And this is a bit where, like, this is a really powerful tool. So if you're on the stream, just really, if you don't understand what it is, take your time, work with the LLM, put this into the LLM, ask it what it does, and just get comfortable. So Tailwind CSS is one of the kind of major CSS classes, and CSS is basically what makes your web page pretty. So essentially at the moment it's asking to install that particular library. So we're going to go yes. And you can see it's just a whole bunch of yeses, but you can see we're still completely in control here. We're the one that's reading what's happening. So we're going to go yes. And at the moment, it can't find this particular library. So it's going to go and work out what the problem is. So essentially it's saying at the moment, it can't find this particular one. So it's going to look in a different place. And now I think it's worked. So let's go yes to that one. So it's setting up Tailwind. And you can see there a whole bunch of new code just got added. So it's building all these different files now. And once again, if you don't understand what these files are, go into them, have a read of them, and ask the LLM, go through them. So this tsconfig, this index.css, these are mainly all just configuration files to get our project up and going, which makes sense because it's in the configuration stage. So now we're going to install some other stuff inside our types. And this is going to be finished fairly soon. So like I think what we're going to get here is all these tasks are going to get completed in one go. I reckon we're about 1 minute away from seeing some code. Cool, so it's setting up our compiler. Once again, if you're on the stream, we'll be kind of covering these over the next couple of weeks. I don't want to go to every single technical detail in these initial streams. So now ShadCN is initialized. Nice. It's going to do this in parallel. So because we just need to install the different ShadCN components, the buttons, the forms, it says it can do all that at the same time to save us a lot of time. So we'll go for yes. That's done now, or nearly done. So it's just going through that shad CN stuff. So this is setting up all the initial stuff for us. And this is the really cool thing. So you're kind of learning by osmosis. I've not used React. I'm a back-end developer by trade in quite a long time. I've obviously been doing this spec-driven development for a good couple of months now, and you just learn by osmosis. So if you forgot something, you've not done it in a long time, working through a couple of these and a couple of cycles, really quickly you can remember it. So now what it's done here, it's making a directory. We'll get our little thing with all of the code folders that we need for our different type sources. We'll also cover what that means next week. So it's updated the to-do list, so how far it's got, and it's still going. So now it's building our forms, and it's creating our form components. So now I think actually this one's finished, and it's just not updated it yet. Well, now it's updated now, so we're in a good place. And now it's just going to finally do that last 3 user stories. So now it's going to make sure our layout's all ready, and it's going to run these in parallel. So now it's writ our header and our sidebar. So that code's all there. It's writ out our overall layout. So inside our layout, we're going to have a sidebar, we're going to have a component. So if we just quickly have a little look what that actually means, if we go back to our wireframe that we gave it as part of our PRD, we've got our overall layout, and we've got our side nav, we've got our header, and inside that as well, we've got our main body. So that essentially what it's building at the moment is it's building the container for all this stuff. It's also building the header component, the sidebar component, and the bit where we're going to put our main forms. So essentially that's what it's doing at the moment. I don't even know what that is. Cool. It's got this nice little thing. Maybe use that for the rest of the session. I'm not even sure how I brought that up. Cool. So let's just get back to it and see where we're at. So now it's asking if we want to go and do this. Yep. I quite like this little purple thing. And then we've got a timeout. So now I think it's nearly all installed, and it's trying to run our code. So anytime now we're going to manage to actually see our server. So it's running it now, so it's running this fight build. It's doing our layout components. And I'm just going to set a new one here. I'm going to do npm run dev. So basically here what I'm just running is I'm actually running the program. So when it's ready, it's going to be on this localhost 5731. So at the moment it's still not quite working. So let's just see how far it is to be from finished. And then, yep. So it's missing a package. So that's why it wasn't working before. And it needs the CSS. And then we're going to install that. We are very nearly to here, everyone. It's setting up the CSS, so just making sure that that's all ready to go. We're setting up our build. If we just go back to our web browser and see where we're at now, something's still not quite right. This is good, because if it's not working, we'll go and show you how we can debug this. So now it's finished all those user stories. We're on 16 and 17, so I still have a little bit of time to go. Maybe I was a little bit too optimistic of how quickly it was going to get through all these. But it's really cool just to see what it's doing. So what it's done now is built the initial CSS classes, and it's built the initial layout and components. Now it's building all our storage and our data models. it's building the storage keys. And let's have a look to see how we're looking. So still broken at the moment. So at the moment it can't find one of these CSS classes. So we'll use that. If it's still broken at the end of it, we'll go through that with the AI and see if we can solve that problem. So it's going to run the build now. So it should actually see this issue when we run this build. Let me uptask the task file. And what I'll just do is I'll just copy this error ready for when it finishes, if it's still not working, that we can use to put inside there. And we'll let it finish before we put this error in. So now it's on the final few tasks. It's on 22 to 25. And the final ones are just some polish tasks. So it's on test 22, building that. So I'm just going to put that error in that it saw now. And I think we're about here. And then it's going to do the final polish and final verification tasks. So it's going to, so it's found an error with the tailwind, and it's going to revert it. So it looks like the tailwind wasn't set up properly. So it's an older version tailwind that it tried to use. And now still not working. This is really good. When these things don't work, it's like literally just working with it to debug and find the issue. Let me run the dir server to see if it works. And it's removed this configuration class that I think it's breaking the build. And by breaking the build, I mean breaking the program, so we can't access it. Cool. And I think we're about there. So hopefully in about 1 minute's time, we're going to have some code that we can go and review. So now it's saying it's finished. So it's passed, no M dashes, no final builds, and no tasks to complete. So let's go and have a look and see how far we are towards our Typeform competitor. So this thing's still not working. I'm just going to make sure it's not our server and just restart it. And I'll run, and we'll go to this one here. Cool. So we have got the start of what looks like something. So we've kind of got this get started page. We have got this side navigation panel. And although this doesn't look like very much at the moment, when we run the next few tasks and we run them at the same time, what we're going to see quite quickly, hopefully, is something that's going to be fairly robust and cool. So I'm just going to go and check to make sure that we've got no errors here before we finish. Nope, that error's fine. So basically what we've done now is we've built our initial shell. So we have built, not quite like the wireframe, but that'll hopefully be there by the end of it. So what we've built is we've built the header container, we've built the navigation panel, and we've built the main part where our content's going to go. So we've done that spec cycle. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to try and run it with the remaining 3 issues. And while that's running next time, we're just going to talk through the end of the lesson. So I think we've probably got about 40 minutes-ish left. But for those of you who kind of got through it, it's essentially kind of repeating that cycle. So just what I'm going to go and do is I'm going to go back to Warp, and I'm going to go back to my project. And now what I'm going to go and do is I'm going to go and build a new spec-kit.specify. So I'm going to go a new one, and I'm going to go spec-kit. Actually what I'm going to go do so that we can talk about this. So I'm going to run this command in the background. Please don't do this if you're kind of new to it. So I'm just going to let Claude accept the different things for us so I can talk through the learning while it's doing its stuff in the background. So I just don't need to be going enter, enter, enter. But I'm going to go spec-kit.specify, and I'm going to say GitHub using the PRD and the remaining 3 issues. Do what you can in parallel. So what this is going to go and then do is it's going to go and read the PRD. So it's done that for it. It's fetching the different information, and then hopefully the PRD, there are 4 user stories. Cool. So it's got the next one. So it's going to build the navigation system. It's going to build the customer details form, and it's going to build the feedback form. So this one is probably too much detail, and going back to what you said before, Javon, this is probably a little bit too much. We're asking it to do quite a lot here. But because we've went through the cycle once, which is the most important thing that we wanted to cover today, if we went through all 4 of them one at a time, it would probably take us a good hour. So we'll just kind of go through this all at once. So we'll just read the specification after it's done it, and then we'll go through the learning aid while it's doing it in the background. So what it's doing now is writing the spec. So essentially what it's done, it's created a new branch, it's reading the stuff from GitHub, and it's created the new spec for us. It's writing the specification and writing the user stories. So that Claude dangerously skip permissions command that I done essentially means that I don't need to press return. Now I really wouldn't suggest that you use that until you're really comfortable with using the tool and you've run it quite a lot of times. I've used SpecKit now a whole bunch of times. I know the code that we're trying to build here. So please don't build that until at least use that tool until you've at least worked through this a few times. Cool, so it is building the different specs now. And it's just working through that. So what it's done now, it's created 2 and 3, and we just need to wait for number 4. And while it's doing that, what we'll do is we'll just chat through the remaining bits of the lesson. This is when you just wish these things could go a little bit faster. Cool, so that's the next spec written. So while that's doing that, let's read through the navigation spec. So it's going to build us a sidebar. It's going to switch between the different forms. Nice. It's going to give a visual indication of the active form. It's going to give us a collapse component, and it's going to give us all these different edge cases. So that looks really nice to me. The customer details form. So what that's going to have in it, it's going to have the form itself. It's going to have the form to fill and submit. It's going to have the submissions. It's going to have the feedback. It's going to have the form name. That looks really cool to me. So it's got the details, the submission, the view, the fields, and the customer feedback. Lovely. And then last but not least, what we've got is story number 4. And the story number 4 is not that one, that's the old one, is the feedback form. So for the feedback form, it's going to have the feedback form. It's going to have a star rating for NPS, really nice. It's going to have a submit NPS function. It's going to have the comments feature, the feedback submission, and everything there looks hunky-dory. So I'm going to go clear, and then I'm going to go SpecKit.plan. I want to complete all these specs in one go. The feedback form. basically what that's going to do then is going to write all of the different bits and bobs for us. So as I said, I probably kind of broke these down for one, but just for the learning aid, let's see what happens when that goes through it. So I'm just going to move this over to another window, and whilst it's doing that, all I'm going to do is I'm going to talk through the kind of remainder of the different parts of the lesson, and I'll kind of look what it's doing on the right hand side when we're talking through here. All right. So just to kind of summarize what we've went through so far. So we looked at what we've done in lab number 1, and we went back to getting to know GrowthPath and who GrowthPath are. Next, we looked at the system that we're going to build. So it doesn't look too dissimilar to the moment from the wireframe. So we have got our header component, we've got our side nav, and then we've got our main component. So that's what the AI is working away at the moment. Then inside there, we've just got the different form controls that we wanted to go and build. So we've got the form creation, we've got the different form types. So the two forms that we're going to be building, the next one are the customer form and the feedback form. We've got the local storage, so this is going to be saving this to local storage. We've got the clean UI that we want, so the clean UI is the ShadCN components, so that should look quite nice at the end of it. And then we've got the tech stack that we're going to be using. So we've chosen React.js, which is one of the major JavaScript libraries. We use something called Vite to package everything together. We've used ShadCN for layout, for buttons and stuff like that, and a whole bunch of stuff here. And as I said, our main man, Hoddle, who's the honey badger, he's going to be taking us through databases next week. Then we started to go through the kind of key parts of today's lesson. So we have got spec-driven development. So we started off with our PRD. So our PRD is the thing that we've got here. So the thing that we're trying to build for overall. So it's a typeform competitor. We're trying to save some money for 2 people in our case study. The solution that we're trying to build is the form. The user personas that we are exploring is from Flora's perspective, who's a salesperson and wants to capture the leads. From Angus' perspective, and Angus is the tech guy who wants feedback on the product. Then we have got the technical requirements for the system, and then the 4 different user stories that we're building, and that's what AI is sitting building in the background that I can see at the moment. So if we just walk through each one of that user stories, and then the first user story that we built was around the technical setup. So this was the foundations, so the folder structure that we were wanting to go through, and we'll kind of go through at the end to make sure it's been done. Then user story number 2 is around the navigation system. So we've got the sidebar that we want to build and how that sidebar will look. We've got the state management, and once again I iterated all this with AI, how the form comes, and it has a random number associated with it. That looks great. Then what we have got is our customer details form. So the one that is for Flora. So this will take in information about the customer, their name, the company they work for, a submit button with the information about the different forms. And then what we've got there is what the form will look like, the different ShadCN components we're going to use. So if you remember ShadCN before, this is ShadCN here, and it's got all these different things that we can use. Is that website not working at the moment? Yeah, so here's all the different things we can use with ShadCN. So for example, if we click on the button, it gives us the code for that button here. If we look at a different one, if we look at maybe a side nav or maybe a slider, so it's got the code for a slider here. If we look for these different blocks, or is there bigger things that we could build using this ShadCN? Go back to the components. We look through this navigation menu. You can see it can build this type of nav. If we scroll down a little bit further, we've got different types of nav. So we're using that ShadCN component. So that's the component library that's happening under the hood. And that's there. So what has happened in the background is that our spec kit.plan cycle has just now finished. So let's go back through that one and see what it's done. So inside the navigation system, what we've got is we've got the plan for all the navigation. So if you go into the navigation system here, what we've got is all the different tasks around it. So what it's done, because I asked it to put it, is put everything into this one folder into 4 now, because I asked it to do it all together. So we've got our plan, we've got our contracts. So we go to the plan, it's going to build our navigation system, our projects, our sidebar, all our different components, our text areas, our customer forms. So it's put everything into this one place now. So if we just kind of look through and make sure we've got, so the spec's right, let's look through the research it's done. So it's looked for state management, so it's going to use React use state. I'm not sure we would have chosen that one. For more complex things, we definitely won't want to use that. We'll probably use something like Zustand. It's got our form architecture, our starring component, our MPS component, our form validation. So this looks all superb. If we go through our data model, it's got the end-to-A's for our different form. It's extending it, so it's adding some new things to our form. So it's adding some new components. That looks really cool. If we go through our contracts, we've got our components, our forms, and our storage API. That looks great. So next we're going to run spec-kit.tasks and get all the tasks. And while that's working, we'll continue just to walk through the lesson in the lab in the background. So as we were saying before, these are the ShadCN components. So ShadCN is probably one of my favorite libraries. I'm not very talented in design and on the front end, so it means that we can make something that looks fairly nice without having to be an absolute wizard on CSS and Tailwind. So that was the PRD and the user stories. So if we remember before, the way that we kind of go through it, we go through this for each user story in our PRD, or user stories, as we've just shown. We go through spec-kit.specify or the /specify command, and that builds our low-level user stories out. We use spec-kit.plan. That spec-kit.plan, what that does is it builds our data model, our contracts, our research steps. We use spec-kit.tasks. That is going to be our big to-do list. And then we love spec-kit.implement, and that's the thing that's going to build the actual code for us. And then at that stage there, what we kind of do there then is we validate if it's right or wrong. So for example, when I had that error that came back, I found that error, I put it into the kind of spec-kit.implement phase, and then it reworked that for us. And then after that, we moved into the next cycle. So this is really what we're going to be doing over the next couple of weeks. And in the next couple of weeks, what I think I'll do is I'll actually build out the code beforehand, so and maybe just run one cycle instead of having to do it. It's the first time we've kind of run through it, maybe a little bit waiting too long for AI to complete. So I think for next week, I'll build the working code, keep them a little bit sharper, and just run through 1 or 2 spec-kit.specify cycles, and then cover the key parts of the session, and which will be databases and GitHub next week. So here is the different things. We've got the PRD, the user story, and the different commands. And then here it talks about setting up the spec kit. So essentially, for setting up the spec kit, what we need to do is we need to install Python. We need to install UV, which is a Python tool, and then we need to then install spec kit. And at that point, we have our commands available to us. So in the background, when we've just been talking through this, our spec-kit.plan is finished. So we're on the final stage now of getting the final implementation done. So if I just bring this back in to screen, and if we then clear the context, let's go into compact again. We'll start a new session. Cool. And we ran spec-kit. Implement. We have ran 3 spec kit cycles together in concurrency to aid a training session that I'm doing. So can you complete the task list for all 3? I think all 3 have been putting into 004 feedback. Can you execute as much as you can in parallel where it makes sense, and ask me any questions if you don't understand. Cool, so we've started a new context window. We're going to add the navigation system. We're going to add the customer form, and we're going to add the feedback form. So now hopefully what this is going to do is going to do the first version of our competitor to type form. So it's kind of going through all this. You can see the task and the, so it's saying if it can see everything that's in the task.md for feedback form, and it's checking the checklists, and then it's going to go through all the coding in the background. So while that's happening, let's just talk through the final parts of the lesson. Cool. So the architecture are the kind of key components that we've built today. So inside our browser, what we've got is our React app. We've got all our ShadCM buttons and components that we'll see in a little minute. We've got our form builder, and everything's getting stored to the database. Next week, what we're going to look at is actually connecting to a proper database with authentication and with things that are a little bit more complex. For anyone that really wants to get into this properly and not vibe code and build things that are kind of scalable and are secure, these are the things I really want you to consider. First of all, working and building your PRD. So really working with a tool or even with a person of what you're trying to build and describing that as in much detail as possible. Then starting back to the start of the session, building that constitution file. So the rules of the road for your project. So do you want to use trust-driven development? Do you want to use vertical slice development? Do you want to use M-dashes? All that type of stuff. Then the technical requirements for it. So what database do you want to use? What programming language do you want to use? And what architecture patterns do you want to use? When do you want to run tests? What test framework? All this stuff then would typically go into the Claude.md. As we said before, is that we've only got that 200,000 context window. So if we run /clear, we can start that window again so the AI doesn't start to hallucinate. And then really key into the final one that we've not covered is that we use the bugs that we come up with in our system to make our system stronger. So before, our bugs are things that come up in the life cycle. So for example, pointing to my different GitHub links, we then use that to go and evolve the system and make it stronger. So we put that into our Claude.md so that we can reuse it again and again. So talking about the PRD, and it's working pretty well in the background. So we're through a couple of phases. I think we're about 5 minutes to see what the app looks like. So the PRD really is our North Star. So the way that I would typically work to build a PRD, and because of little time, let's kind of work through it. So I would normally work with whatever coding tool that I want, and then let's start to build the PRD for the next session. So I'd like you to build me a PRD for a Monday.com competitor. And what I'm going to be using is SpecKit and the SpecKit workflow to build this particular competitor out. I've got a brand kit that I will refer to as the co-engineers brand kit that I want you to use for look and feel. I want to use React.js. I want to use ShadCN. I want to use a Supabase for storing it. And really what the key features that I want is I want a Kanban board, I want a way to add tasks, assign tasks to different team members, and that kind of core functionality. Really what I want to focus on is the core functionality of kind of Kanban and sharing tasks within a team, and not some of the other tasks that would be in Monday.com, Trello, etc. So I just want the kind of core features of task management. Can you go away and can you think about this deeply, and can you ask me a number of questions to help me form the PRD? So going back to what you've asked earlier on, this is typically how I would start to work through the PRD and then start to break it into user stories. So I just have a kind of a discussion with the AI to kind of work out what I'm going to do in. So Claude at the moment is working through that different stuff. And then, so it's finding the brand kit. So I've actually worked with it before. I've gathered your context. It understands the spec kit workflow. Initial analysis, you want Kanban full style, React.js, co-engineer's brand. Questions for me. So what's your product's name? Answer to question number 1, the product's name is, I quite like Kanban Zoo. Let's go for that. It's for internal teams only. It's 80% of the features of Monday.com, 100 of the price. It's for just our single team. The user roles would be a team manager and a person that can work with the board. Typically, our team sizes are 3 to 5. I just want basic authentication in Supabase, so email and password. And for the board hierarchy, just kind of traditional columns, but I want a way to add my own columns. I want the presets to be to do, in progress, in review, and done. I want the kind of column limits to be, should you have work in progress limits? No, let's not to go for that. Swim lanes, yeah, I definitely want swim lanes so we can work through that. From the task cards, title, description, assignee, tags, that looks all great to me. Team collaboration, let's keep the team collaboration stuff quite minimal at the moment, just as long as the way a means to sign to different people, that would be good. Viewing and filtering, that would be great as well, by person, by task type, and by date. Sounds good. Let's keep it as simple as we can for technical decisions at the moment. Mobile support would be really great, so if we could have mobile support, that would be good. What we're not building, yeah, so that's absolutely cool. We're not doing nothing with time tracking. Let's leave Gantt charts out at the moment. Complex integrations, we'll leave that for the future, and I think that's it. Cool. So now what we've walked through is the next stage of our PRD. So what I've got is the name Kanban Zoo. So you can kind of see what we're going to be making next time. And I think our code is just about finished, which is cool. So we've got, now we have went through the PRD and the North Star. So now what it's done now is built me some follow-up questions. I've gave you enough answers. Can we just please have the PRD now? That would be useful, thank you. Can we have it in Markdown? So now we have got, hopefully, the PRD coming through, and I think our code is just about finished. So this is a perfect timing. But I do want to finish this PRD one because I want to see what it's come up with. So I've got a solid structure for your PRD. Kanban Zoo is a focused no-fill Kanban. The tech target is internal teams. The primary color is Bitcoin orange. If anyone knows me, they know like why that will be. The problem statement that we're trying to solve. The target users, team management, team member, team size. Yep, that looks good. The authentication user stories that we've got. This is going to be a bit of a bigger build next week. So we've got a good 36 user stories. So we'll think about how to build that up. I think we managed to probably get that down to about 8. And then it's taken us through the high-level user stories and talking us through each one. So that's what we'll be exploring next week. Here's the brand kit, which is my co-engineering brand kit. Looks great. Typography that I use, so the primary one I use Inter, and the secondary is JetBrains Ono. For anyone that wants to know what JetBrains Ono is, it's like the old vintage gaming font. Printable stuff, component styling, looking beautiful, and all the stuff in there. So that's got the first version of what we're going to be building next week. So we're just coming to the end of the application that it's built for us. And if we just work through this from the top and have a look at some of the stuff that it's done for us. So it's built out our navigation system. It's built out our forms. It's built out some tooltips and buttons for us. That's all using the ShadCN components. It's built in our NPS stuff for us. And the build's now passing. So it's going to go and update the files. So the moment of truth. I don't think my server's running. Oh no, it must be running actually. Okay. Create form. So for some reason, the ShadCN libraries are not getting loaded properly. So I'm just going to ask and say, this looks fairly terrible. And the ShadCN components don't seem to be rendering properly. I'm going to take a picture of this and I'm going to say I've created an image on desktop so you can see what it looks like, but at the moment I'm not impressed how it looks. Can you fix this? So once again, we're just going through that kind of loop cycle, and it is going to go then and start working through it. But while it's working through the UI, let's look at some of the functionality and see how it's working. So at the moment, we have got our thing. We've got the create form up here. We've got our get started. We've got our side nav that's kind of working. We've got this create form button. So it lets us create a form. So we can create this customer form and the feedback form. So hopefully in a minute after we've run some styling rules over it, it'll look a little bit nicer. So it lets us create this feedback form. And then in the feedback form, we can give it a name. So let's say feedback form. And then in the feedback form, we've got this different things that we can do. Oh, this is a form. And then if we submit, that form's been saved and we've got our feedback form that's been created. We've got the submissions tab for what's been sent, and let's try the different type of form. So a customer detail form, and let's add John, and let's say jim@aol.com, which I always use for anything I ever sign up for. And we'll put that number in, which is not my number, and let's say co-engineers, and submit. Perfect. So we've got the form. So at the moment, this is working as I said it should. It just doesn't look very good. So that's something now that we can work through, and it's a really great example of kind of when it gets to a fairly good place, but it's not quite working as we said, as we see for. So it's asking to refresh the browser. So let's just see. Okay, let's restart the server to make sure nothing's being stored in the server and make sure it's not that. npm run dev. Still the same, so I'm just going to go back to the AI. So just on the side screen, I'm just going to say still. This looks, it works functionally well, but it just looks like an website from the 80s, which I imagine that the CSS is not being loaded properly. So the create form button and stuff like that, the actual form itself, everything seems to work, but it just doesn't look that well. Can you make a detailed plan to make the UX look beautiful? So what we would probably do at this stage, what we would most likely do is create a new spec kit and create a new specify and at this stage, just concentrate on look and feel only. I'm going to try and do it a little bit quicker just so we can get to see something. But I think generally from the point of view, and we'll just make sure we've got no errors that are loading. So we're just working through that one in the background. But it looks good functionally at the moment, but what it doesn't look quite good at is it's got the right UX. So while the AI is working through that in the background, so you can hear what I just asked it. I asked it to go and look at the Tailwind setup, make sure that the ShadCM components are working properly. We'll just keep talking through that PRD and the final bits of the lesson. So the stuff that the PRD is going to cover in the next session, all the way down to the user flows at the end. So this is all the things that we're going to be covering in the next session, which is pretty cool. So then the things that we went through today. So first of all, we set up the infrastructure in cycle number 1. In cycle number 2, what we done is we set up the app components, the sidebar, and the main content. So we ran all 3 of these in parallel. And Siobhan asked a really good question earlier on, is what happens and how much features can you put into one go without breaking stuff? So I think we've got a good answer to the question there, that maybe we went too much in one cycle, but we'll kind of see how it does on the fix that it's putting in for it. Then we built the customer details form. So it has the different bit here. So I think that had that all, and it's saving it to local storage like we expected. And then we've got the feedback form. And the feedback form has got the star rating, the NPS, so it's got all the stuff that we actually asked for. So functionally, it's working well. It's just not quite got the UIX points. And that's the majority of the different stuff. So what it's just working on at the background is a plan to fix the UX for us. So if we just go back to the UX and see what at the moment, the AI is analyzing the system at the moment, and when it starts to go through the plan, we will talk through it. But that is where the UX is at the moment. So just when it's starting to do that, a couple of interesting things that we'll just talk through, just while the AI is working, is some of how I created some of these diagrams. So what I have been using is various tools to build some of these diagrams. So let's talk through each one of them and how I actually created them. So let's start from the wireframe. So this wireframe here and how I generated this was with a Python script, and that Python script was built via AI, and it's hooked to the Gemini Nano Banana professional API. And essentially what that kind of does is it builds different wireframes or different images based upon the system prompt. So basically, if you cover and go through this lesson here on rich images, this covers exactly how to actually do that. So you will need a Gemini API key, so you'll have to set Gemini up. But after you do that, you can start to create some of the different types of images. So then after that one, if we just go back to this stream, how did I create this sequence diagram? So once again, this used Gemini and Nano Banana Pro, and that kind of goes through the kind of key things that we were working through today. If we get through to some of these, so this one here, once again, was built by Nano Banana Pro. And finally, these ones towards the bottom, not this one here. In fact, every single one of these were built by Nano Banana. You can build simpler diagrams if you're building diagrams to explore software components using something called mermaid.js. So there's an example in here and doing that one as well, I think in the brand asset generator as well. Okay, so in the background while we've been talking, what we've got is we have got the plan for what it wants to go and fix it. So it's going to rewrite the index.css. That's definitely what the issue is. It's going to update the classes. It's going to apply the fixes, and it's going to rerun the server. So hopefully, after it's went through this at the moment, then it's going to look a lot more beautiful AI. So the plan that it's suggested to go with is it's going to it's just working through this at the moment. So it's going to update the index.css. It's going to put the creates tailwind syntax in, which I nearly can guarantee is wrong. It's going to remove the old CSS animations. It's going to update components.json, and it's going to reinstall all our dependencies. So it's really cool this is happening live, because this is the type of thing that you're going to have to work through and kind of debug. And like what we were seeing there was it just wasn't looking right. So now it's updating it in real time, which is pretty cool. So if I just bring back up. Oh, now we're starting to cooking gas. So now it's starting to look a bit better. So that definitely was a Tailwind CSS issue. Oh, so now we've got this nice sidebar that goes into that. That looks sweet. We've got our different feedback forms. Nice. Oh, it's got some nice animation. Oh, it's got some nice forms. It's got this next form. It's got our submissions. Oh, that looks pretty sweet. It's got, oh, look at that. That coming kind of in from a right graphic. That is pretty cool. Let's get rid of that. So AI is trying to be unhelpful now and actually test it for me. So I'm just going to stop it because it's trying to fix something it shouldn't be fixing. And I'm just going to say stop bro. And then let's just go through it, because I think we are in a really cool place now. And if we just create the form, look at that one more time. If anyone's like done a lot of CSS before, doing animations like that can be really tricky. So that's quite good. Let's go into the customer details form. That looks pretty good. Jim at AOL.com. Yeah, so we've got a new one down the right hand side. We've got our create form for our feedback. And although this is really simple, all we need to do now, because we've got the bare bones of the structure, is just run a spec-kit.specify for a more complex form. So now we just need to continue to build any forms that we'd want. So although this is a simpler example, all you'd have to do, so for example, if you want a field form with 10 pages in it, all you'd have to do is go through one spec-kit.specify cycle. Cool, I think we're in a good place. Let's me just go back. And so, sorry, I've missed a couple of questions on the stream. Yeah, so I wouldn't go for a second PRD, Joel. What I do is I just go to have extra user stories within that PRD. So typically the PRD is just like the overall thing for the project. So if you think about it as Russian dolls, that's outer Russian doll, and then the user stories maybe the inner ones, with the ones that you kind of create as the high level ones, epics, if you're kind of talking them, and then the lower ones is what it's actually working on in the spec-kit.specify. So I think we're in a really good place. So in like, what is it, under 2 hours, what we have went through is built like a spec-kit.specify version of Typeform. And as I said, if we just went through a couple of more cycles, we could have a database connected, authentication connected, and a couple of more examples that are a little bit more complex. So I think we're in a good if there's any final questions in the stream, then ping them up in here. And if not, I think we will finish for today. Any final bits, Shafiq, anyone? Well, I'll hopefully see everyone next week when we're going to build a Monday.com competitor. If you're looking at this on demand, then just reach out to me anytime and I'll kind of take you through it. I'm going to push this code after I put the unit tests in and stuff like that, that you can go and pull and have a go about in your own time. But as I said, I'm fairly happy with it. So thank you everyone for joining the stream. It's been a lot of fun. Uh, I love feedback. So this is the first time I've done a long form stream with this. So if you've got feedback of how you think it went, I think there's parts of the stream maybe that were a little bit prolonged in the middle. And I think what I'll do for the next stream is build some of the components out and then talk through the specs and how it was built and reference that. So if you think that would be good, that would be super cool. Have you tried this with mobile apps? Really good question. Absolutely, Cheval. So I've built a whole bunch of apps on Android, iOS, and progressive mobile apps. So if you have a look at my GitHub, there's a whole bunch of stuff there. If you use Expo, which is like that React Native wrapper, I think I don't know loads about it, but like there's a whole bunch of things of people using using the spec kit to build complex mobile apps as well. So absolutely, it is. The only thing that is not that good for is stuff that's not got good documentation. So if you're working like on mainframe systems in COBOL, where there's like the documents are inside a bank inside the system on a sticky note, that's where the bit where it's not that good. But anything that's got new documentation, it's very good on. All right, well, have a cracking Saturday, everyone, and we'll talk to you next one. Cheers, everyone. Bye.